Welcome, everybody, to another amazing episode of Wellness Warriors. Today, I have a fellow breast cancer conqueror, Kirstin Nussgruber. Hope I said that right.
Yes, you did.
But she's a cancer nutrition expert. She's an author. She's a speaker. Kirstin and I met at a conference in San Diego, I believe, a few years ago. And she's written a great book called Confessions of a Cancer Conqueror, 5-step process to transform your relationship with cancer. And she also has an online program about the first steps to take control of cancer care. So typically in a situation like yours or mine, our pain becomes our passion. So I always like to hear what was the driving force in you now being a spokesperson and supporting women who are going through a breast cancer journey. So tell me about the first journey and, how you were then and the recurrence, which is always a bummer and a shock. And, I totally understand that. And what you've done differently to prevent so you never go there again.
Well, thanks very much for having me on your show. Yes, it kind of does mark you. So I did decide to change my career before I was diagnosed, actually. I had an opportunity. We were living in Germany at the time. And, as you know, over there, the integrative holistic approach is very much more ingrained in the whole mindset of people. So it was obvious for me to go down that path. And then when I was in the middle of that, I was diagnosed with the first breast cancer at the same time as my mother was going through chemotherapy for her second breast cancer, for her recurrence. And we have both lost her sister, my aunt, a couple of years prior to that, again, due to a breast cancer, a metastasized breast cancer, actually. So it kind of was, you're throwing into this ball game of I'm next, it's in your genes. And from that, though, it took me on the whole self-discovery path, basically starting with the notion of finding answers, wanting to know, how can I stop this cycle? Is there something I can do? And I'm not just doomed and I just need to lie back and go, well, it's my turn now, which is a little bit what my mother's attitude at the time was. And, that took me really on the path of, we at least can be proactively involved. And I think that's a very important message overall, is this proactive prevention and proactive fighting it as well. And I like to move away from fighting, as you can see from the title of my book, because we really need to transform our relationship with cancer. It's not our enemy, although we feel like that at the beginning. And, we kind of need to go through those motions too, where we kind of make, go through that where we see it as the enemy, but then kind of emerge on the other side, realizing it's also meant to teach us a lot, and we need to kind of connect within ourselves and try and figure out what are my contributing causative factors other than just the physiology of cancer. Is it in your genes or not? And in my instance, for example, I did not have the genetic mutations that are typically associated. I'm BRCA1, BRCA2 negative, which was unusual considering my family history. But there you go. So it took you on a whole different spin. And I think we as women need to be empowered to understand the role we can play. In our society, we've become so complacent by convenience, by the rush of everything, that we've lost touch with what really nourishes us. And that is obviously food plays a very big role in that, but also the whole mental, spiritual side. And we need to reconnect with that. And there are ways and means of doing that in today's crazy technology-driven world. And I'm just wanting one of those advocates to say there is a way. And it doesn't mean that the challenges are less or easier. As you can see, I had an integrative approach to my cancer care and was diagnosed again. It wasn't a recurrence, actually. It was a different type of breast cancer 3 years later, which was another learning curve, all of it itself, as you can imagine. You understand that too.
So how did you discover the cancer the first time? Were you doing a breast self-exam? Did you feel a lump? Did your doctor find it?
Well, interesting you say that, because we go back to the lump story. I did discover a lump in my breast, which upon further examination, which was at the time a mammogram and ultrasound, the mammogram didn't show anything, but the ultrasound showed another lump on the other breast, but that was not, it was too small and too deep and it couldn't be felt yet. So I had to go through the notions of, I did do the biopsy and realized that the lump on the one breast was actually benign, but the other one, the tiny one that we had found by coincidence because we found the lump in the other one, that one was actually cancerous. So I think, you know, diagnostic tools, again, the mammograms for me didn't show anything in both cases, in both times. The ultrasound one time, the other time also not. So we really have to rely on the diagnostic tools. Give you an image of a side of the story, but not the whole story. The second time around, I also did a thermo scan, which my breast surgeon at the time said to me, I'm really interested in seeing the results. I'm not allowed to use them as a diagnostic tool. Remember, this was quite a couple of years ago, but she said, do share the results with me, which was great to have such an open-minded conventional breast surgeon. And that showed something too, which, you know, was the only thing really that gave a warning symptom. So I do feel, though, that we as women, especially with the rates of breast cancer also really moving into the younger generation, the younger crowd as well, and having a young adult daughter myself, it is so important to understand, to connect with this tissue that we call our breasts, and it is an educational process. Did I do the lump, finding my lumps on a regular basis? Not before the diagnosis. I did it occasionally, but not as regularly as I possibly could have. However, having made that a fairly frequent exercise allowed me to really step in and you know, be diagnosed at a very, very early stage.
That's great. That's great. Yes. Well, we know about my breast friend, and you know, we're encouraging women to learn to feel the normal geography of their breasts every month, so that if there's a change,
correct,
even the size of a small pea, their fingers are going to be trained to be able to notice any types of changes. Now, when you were diagnosed both times, was there anything going on in your life, either emotionally, physically? Like, did you kind of innately know something wasn't right in your life or in your body?
It's interesting you pick up on that, because I had embarked on a kind of more of a spiritual self-growth path, even starting a couple of years prior, where I've always been a very questioning person, always wanting to know why. Always had, I was a typical kid with 10 million questions, and where, you know, the adults at the time would go, oh, here she goes again. Yes, you know how there are uncomfortable relationships in your lives, or you can't put, you know, you just know you'd need to delve there, but you don't quite know how. And when I was diagnosed the first time, what really came through for me loud and clear was, now is the time that you also need to address that particular relationship in your life, which was with a family member, my mother actually. And it was very loud for me, loud and clear, saying, you need to do this while she's still alive. Because remember, she was going through her second breast cancer. She wasn't well. She also had an autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, which also ran in her side of the female family. So a lot of connections there. Yes. Luckily, I had a very close friend who is a hypnotherapist. So that was the path that I took there too. Saying I need help and I'm ready. And, you know, that's the most important learning phase, I think, is you need to be ready to delve down along that path and try and find out what else is contributing to the cancer growth that I need to work on as well. Now, you may think, well, she was diagnosed again, so obviously that didn't work. And I have to kind of really say here, what came through very loud and clear for me with my second diagnosis is, and I won't deny that initially you really feel betrayed, and that the shock cuts even deeper than before. You go through a real kind of crisis in terms of, have I done enough? Did I not do enough? Is it worth it? You go through that. That is normal. It's a normal emotional roller coaster ride that you go through. But at the same time, what came through loud and clear was I've dealt with the original contributing factor. It's not that anymore. When I again went down that path, included that line, it was, I had dealt with that part. There are ways and means of testing to find out if you've kind of really released that emotional association with a particular experience. And it was something else that I needed to deal with. And because I'm on this path of self-discovery, I think when we open ourselves up, that's when, to say it very bluntly, stuff comes up. Whatever is ready to be released next does come to the fore. And, you just have to take it a step at a time and deal with it. And just understand that dealing with something like cancer, it's different puzzle pieces that you have to work on. There is not just one specific way. I did choose an integrative approach, so I did go conventional and integrative, or in parallel. To me, it was, again, it's kind of a choice that you take where you think, this is what I can throw myself behind with full force, no regrets, but with full commitment. And that's a very personal choice. It was very obvious to me, especially with the family examples that I had, that, purely a conventional road is simply not enough. I needed to do way more and continue to do way more. So it's a lot of more work, it's extra involvement, it's extra investment in time and discipline and finances on an ongoing basis. And again, that's why I transform your relationship with cancer, because it's an ongoing journey, which is in itself very, very eye-opening, very thrilling, but it's work too. And it's really the only way to get through this.
Absolutely. Now, what would you say was your biggest takeaway in hindsight in reversing cancer? What did you really learn from that experience? What did it teach you?
That the seed starts early, and the earlier we have the chance to kind of open our eyes and become aware of the mind-body connection, I think that's a very big part of proactive prevention too, is to realize that, we are very much alive, intricate 3D human beings that interact with our immediate environment, but also with a kind of esoteric spiritual environment that isn't as tangible as the physical presence of things. So we have to just open ourselves to that. There's not just one right or wrong way. There are various ways to embrace this kind of philosophy, and people do it in different ways. But just to really be aware that the seed gets planted very early on, and that with every physical component, now be that cancer or even an autoimmune condition, because I have that running in my family as well, there is a mental, emotional, spiritual connection, and we need to give that the same attention and the same weight when we address it, when it has erupted, so to speak, and we need to maintain the disease, try and cure it. Maybe we can cure it, maybe we just need to maintain it depending on when we discover it. We have to move beyond the physical tangible that we need to do. Like you have a physical cancer tumor, you need to do something with that, whatever that is, but you also have to take it way beyond that.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about your 5-step process in transforming your relationship with cancer. So let's go through each of the steps and what you recommend in your book.
So I mentioned a puzzle piece, right? And so we know nutrition plays a very important part, and that's where I help all my clients as well understand that food is medicine, and we need to be on board with that. And we can do that every single day, a couple of times a day. So the one part of the 5 steps is absolute nutrition. Try and understand also with a cancer milieu is how can we influence our internal environment for one, but then we also need to address it to the specific cancer that we have. We need to understand how does our specific cancer actually function, what triggers it, what allows it to grow and progress, and what effect does it have on the environment that we are exposed to as well. It's all synergy. It all interacts, right? We need to understand that the environmental toxicity we have been exposed to maybe as a child and are exposed to still, that set a seed, that set a certain foundation. We need to address that. It might have weakened certain parts of our body. How are we metabolizing certain nutrients? Do we have gut issues going on? Are we able to absorb nutrients? Do we have silent inflammation going on? What organ support do we need? Organs of elimination, how are they functioning? And is there a relationship there too? Is it related to, do we have food sensitivities? Do we have other issues that we're not aware of? We have to really fine tune ourselves, and thank God we've got functional medicine to help us with certain diagnostic testing as well. If we have an assumption of there being an imbalance somewhere, we can do some testing, we can figure that out. And that's also part and parcel of overall prevention moving forward. So nutrition is not just about what am I supposed to eat and not eat, and what more and what less, but it's also, can I absorb the nutrients, and is this adding to a pre-existing condition of inflammation that I already have or inherited or not, and how do I support that? So that's the nutrition part. Then you have the exercise part, as we all know, that we need to be active. First and foremost, our lymphatic system is the system of detoxification that we can only get moving with muscle contraction. So I always liken it to, imagine the picture of your blood vessels and the tiny capillaries. They, it runs like a spider web all over your body. It's attached to a heart that pumps the blood through. Our lymphatic system is very similar, but it has no heart. So the only way that lymph fluid can really be pumped through is through movement. And movement plays a very important key, not excessive movement at all, but, movement obviously designed for the individual. But it's same, things like just going through chemotherapy, for example, people just sitting there with their drips, it's kind of the worst thing that you can do, even though you're getting fatigued, but you need to start moving as well while you're getting it. And it makes such a big difference also before radiation treatment, is to really exercise, and it just needs to be a brisk walk beforehand, before your radiation session to really get oxygenated, to try and also enhance the therapy that you're getting. So exercise, very key. And I'm not a wildly athletic person. So my main cardio exercise I get by walking my dog, but I walk briskly. It's not just a meandering around through the countryside, it's a brisk walk outside. Gives me the fresh air, gives me the movement. And, you can augment that with some yoga or Pilates or some other toning and strengthening exercises too. You can do intermittent exercising so easily when you're walking. You suddenly do a brisk walk and you walk slowly again. There's so many ways in which you can incorporate it in your lifestyle without you having to now become this super major athlete that many of us just aren't. Okay.
Right.
Exercise was the second point. So the third point is your motivation, and your overall mindset, because that underlies how you deal also with the normal stresses in your life. Stress management falls into that too. We are in a society where you hear stress all the time, and people are so used to just saying, I am so stressed. And it becomes an identity. And they don't realize how we're clinging to that, and we're kind of defining ourselves with that too. And, stress, I always start by saying, is a very positive element in your life, because you're supposed to be able to experience stress every now and then and give your system a real ramp up. That's what it's supposed to do. It's actually quite healthy to have that reaction. The problem is that if we have it all the time and we don't realize that we are keeping it at that elevated level because of perceived stress. If we run around and get churned up by our environment, the media, people we speak to, the kind of general talk, we are stressed. Our body thinks it's stressed all the time, because the body really doesn't know the difference between perceived stress and like a real stressful event, like if you have a divorce or if you have a work change or, an event happening in your life. just thinking you're stressed all the time and thinking you can't cope and waking up in the morning thinking, oh, this day, I don't know how to manage this day, that alone can have the same impact physiologically on your body than a particular event. So dealing with stress management and understanding again that that's an integral part of that's what you need to do. We're not necessarily going to be able to change stressful situations. Some we might, but most often we can't. We have to find ways in which we deal with that. And it's imperative that we find ways that work for you and that we intentionally do them. You know, there can be something as easy as picking 5 or 10 minutes of your day in which you are doing something that really calms you down, or where you feel you are doing something for yourself. And that's often how we start with, when people are just not used to doing that at all, right? The fourth item on my list, on my little puzzle here, is then detoxification. You know, we have to realize that we have magnificent bodies who can really adapt a great deal, but the detoxification pathways could be blocked. It could just be too much for our body, and we need to reassess. It's kind of like you tune your car every now and then. You have to do the same with your systems of detoxification and figure out, are they running optimally? And if not, let's do something about that. So it involves physiologically looking at yourself through certain testing as well. It also involves scanning your immediate environment in our modern lifestyles. What is adding to my stress here? To give you an example, linking it to functional testing, we can test ourselves for mycotoxins, you know, is mold affecting us? And we can find out things like a certain, you know, in a test where you test yourselves for molds, there are different molds that are being tested that you could be exposed to. So say that a mold shows up that is associated with something in your life. I mean, we always think of mold, we think of water damage and so on, but there can be a food molds that could affect you. So the coffee or the wine that you're drinking could be exposed to mold, and you never see that mold. You don't think it is moldy, but it's affecting you, and a test will show that you're high on that. So what can you do about that? Besides supporting your body to get rid of it, but at the same time, you need to also remove the source. Well, look at it. If you're using fresh coffee beans, are those coffee beans going moldy? That's a sure sign that there's something wrong with the coffee beans to begin with. Sometimes it's little steps like that. We don't necessarily make that connection, but we realize that could be adding to a certain toxic load. I need to do my best in my ability to reduce that toxic load, and need to take the necessary steps. And again, functional testing, the data shows you what you need to do. The data shows you how your body is reacting. So that's very direct, very good feedback to try and figure out what are the certain lifestyle changes that I need to do to eliminate that or to reduce that to its minimum.
Are you an advocate of saunas and coffee enemas and that sort of thing?
Well, there's so many different things you can do. So I did coffee enemas at a very specific part of my life as well. I don't do them every single day. I did them for a particular time period, but what I do in a very regular period is going into our infrared sauna, far infrared sauna that we have at home. I think that was one of the best investments we did. Got my husband on board as well. And we literally do that on a very regular basis. And by that, I mean a couple of times a week. And we are noticing when we started, which was a couple of years ago, but we noticed the effects right away where, when you're giving your body an outlet, the body kind of responds in kind and goes, thank you for allowing me this avenue to excrete. And it'll tell you when it needs you to do that again. So if for whatever reason there was a time period when we didn't do it that regularly because we were away, we had visitors or whatever the case may be, you suddenly feel a little bit clogged up and you feel, you know what, if I go into the sauna, I probably will feel better. And that's exactly what happens is you go into the sauna and you emerge from it almost feeling like a spring chicken, and you go, see, the body was saying I need an outlet. You gave it to me before, you opened that channel before, please continue doing that. It's looking after our health does require a mindset shift in terms of what do I need to invest in long term, and having an infrared sauna at home really is worth it long term, because you are enabling your body to deal with all the stuff that we are exposed to, right? We live an hour outside of New York City, when at nighttime we can see, the sky, where New York City is, the sky is lit up. It's always lit up, although we are, an hour and a half outside of it. Whereas if you turn the other way towards Pennsylvania, it's dark. So the influence of the city is right there. We're not going to move. Where are we going to move to here in New Jersey, where we're not exposed to that, for example, et cetera, et cetera. So again, there's always ways and means of which we have to surrender to the fact that we're living in a modern world to certain exposures that we can't always change right away, but we can support our body's detoxification systems. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Now, so step number 5.
And the fifth one is spirituality. So that is a topic, each to their own, what they choose, just that you do realize that there is some spiritual element about you that you want to connect with, that you want to explore, that does give you not just strength, but also gives you a sense of awareness of where you are within the realm of things, and realize that you have a much larger purpose than just, sitting here right now at the table talking to you. But, we are all connected as well. I think that's the most profound realization once you open yourself up to that, is that we are all in the same boat. We are all connected in some way, shape or form, and influence each other through our decisions. I think whichever path you choose to go onto that, it's very humbling, and it does kind of put a perspective on things. Of also, when you ask the question, why me? Why is this happening to me? And I deal with a lot of clients that are not outwardly unhealthy. They're already eating a pretty healthy diet. They might be exercising. They might have stable relationships, and yet they get cancer. And often they come to me going, I know so many people who eat such crappy food and they don't get, why me? And exploring the spirituality is very important, crucial to helping us connect with what's going on here, and why is this happening to me? What's my role in this? What am I supposed to get out of this?
Yeah, very good, very good. Yes, healing the emotional wounds is such an important aspect of healing, not just physically but emotionally. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kirstin, I've enjoyed hearing your information and your view on being a breast cancer conqueror. Now, if our community wants to learn more about you and what you have to offer, where would they find you?
I have a website which is called kirstinscancercare.com. So my name is not Kirstin, it is Kirstin. That is Kirstin, kirstinscancercare.com. I have a Facebook page by the same name. I have a YouTube channel by the same name. I'm on Instagram, same name. So we have some consistency there. But I would welcome the interaction. I post pretty regularly on my Facebook page as well, LinkedIn as well, by the way. Just sharing information, empowering information, just to help create awareness. And that's really what this is all about, is there are so many different ways of moving forward in an integrative way. There's not just one way, but we are all in this together, really. Absolutely. Absolutely. And really, when it comes down to it, and maybe your 5 steps, and maybe my 7 essentials, and maybe Dr. Tony's, 7 steps. I mean, it all comes down to the same root cause. I mean, all of it. So yes, it does. It does. Just a different way of expressing it. So thank you so much for being a cancer warrior and supporting women that are, struggling and feeling challenged. We know what it's like to be there, and it's awesome that you provide a safe place for women to
to get some healing support. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, this is Dr. V sending you a big, huge healing heart hug, and we will talk with you next time. Bye-bye for now.